Suraj, I am audible?
Audible, sir.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to sincerely thank my close friend Anil Kumar Pillai, with whom I did have a paper on recycled aggregate, which is again towards sustainable concrete. And I would also like to, before I start my presentation, would like to thank Suraj for being with us for the Ramco Cements. And I also take this opportunity to sincerely thank all my members of the Association of Consulting Civil Engineers Mangalore chapter, who have been very supportive in this endeavor of our research and their collaboration with NITK Surat. With this note, I would like to start my presentation, and I welcome all the participants who have joined online today for this webinar. So today I'm going to speak to you maybe for 1 hour from now on the important topic of sustainable concrete construction. So I would be sharing few slides on the concrete first before getting into
I think there's a problem with bandwidth, sir.
yeah.
I think you can switch off your video also if bandwidth is a problem.
Okay. You can continue, Dr. Subhash Yargal, sir. Subhash Yargal, sir, can you hear us? Anil, sir, are you able to hear him?
No, I'm not able to hear.
Dr. Subhash Yargal, sir, we are not able to hear you. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's okay. Suraj, the audio is muted.
Okay, I have unmuted now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it fine?
Yeah, now it's okay, sir.
Okay. So thank you so much. Yeah. We'll just get started with the most fascinating construction material all of us know today, and it has been exploited to its full extent, has been the concrete. Yeah. So let's just go through why concrete has been so popular and it has been so advantageous to all of us is because of its high compressive strength, which has been to its advantage. And concrete can be cast to any shape or size that the architect can dream of. It is the only material which can take the shape of the formwork, whatever we envisage or wish to have. And concrete has the unique distinction that we can manufacture concrete on site. Therefore, it is going to be economical. And invention of pre-stressing by Presinet has dictated the need for producing high-strength concrete. And we know concrete, being a composite material with steel, has unlimited structural applications, which we have been using all through. And the importance of lightweight concrete. So today we can design and use lightweight concrete, which has dual advantage. That is, it has the reduced density coupled with the superior properties of thermal insulation. And to generalize, today we are in a position to design a concrete capable of resisting heat, could be to resist seawater chemicals, to resist frost and any chemical attack arising out of the industrial effluents. As far as the demands of nuclear age, we have used concrete for radiation shielding in nuclear reactors and also in hospitals to contain this nuclear fuel, which can be used for medication purposes to treat cancer, etc. Concrete can also be sprayed onto and also filled into fine cracks for repairs by the process of gunneting. We can today pump concrete, and also it can be laid in difficult positions. So we are all familiar with the self-compacting concrete. So concrete is durable, concrete is fire resistant, but requires very little maintenance. Now, this was the old school of thought. I would like to stress that today we cannot take it for granted that it requires very little maintenance, because we have been producing concrete with a lot of value added industrial byproducts. I don't call these industrial byproducts as waste products, because today we are using them to the best possible. So once we are introducing these industrial byproducts and producing different kinds of concrete, so we cannot take it for granted that it is going to be durable. We have to ensure durability by periodic maintenance. So some other general remarks related to sustainability. So we know concrete is the most consumed construction material today, only next to water. This is, all of us know this. And undoubtedly, cement is going to be the costliest ingredient of concrete. And cement clinker production consumes large amount of energy. So it is a very energy intensive manufacture of cement. And it is also associated with release of large amounts of carbon dioxide, which has a notable environmental effect. So we'll discuss about this. Further, due to the rapid increase in construction activities all over the world, the construction and demolition waste, what we call as C&D waste, constitutes a major portion of waste that is being generated, and one must analyze practices needed for waste utilization, its management, and also its safe disposal to address the sustainability aspects. No doubt, development has inflicted severe damage on the environment. We are not going to argue on this, and therefore, it definitely is going to endanger its sustainability. So we have to have a compromise, strike a balance between the development and to see that we sustain ourselves in the years to come. The exploitation of natural resources, a major concern for sustainability, in particular the non-renewable resources for construction, has led to and is leading to millions of tons of construction and demolition waste. So it has been a challenge to handle this C&D waste in the years to come. So on an average, if you say, every year we are producing 15 billion tons of concrete throughout the world, which essentially means that it is 2 tons of concrete per individual per year, which is not a small amount of concrete that we are utilizing. The depleting natural resources in the current scenario warrants or is demanding research to examine the viable alternative means that are available, modes, and the methods for sustainable construction. So any effort in reduced use of cement consumption is definitely laudable, is appreciable, and is a welcome move. So we are advocating or preaching or teaching the use of supplementary cementitious materials, mostly which are siliceous in nature or aluminous in nature. So this is definitely has been exploited, and the research is still ongoing. Now let us come back to some of the concrete habitations that we have all over the world today. So this photograph is familiar to most of the people. So this is the photograph near the Mumbai airport, where you see a large concrete jungle of the city, and you also have around 50 to 60 acres of slum dwelling just attached to the periphery of the Mumbai airport. So there is one side development, okay, and the other side the grave situation of the living conditions. So I'm just comparing or sharing this slide to emphasize that this is not sustainability. So there is a large gap between the haves and the have-nots. And if you can bridge this gap between the rich and the poor and make everybody's living conditions, basic requirements, then probably we have addressed the problem of sustainability from the point of human or the mankind. So one more photograph in the same locality. Yes. So I was talking about the living conditions in the slum dwelling. Okay. So you have the wastewater simply let off. You have a lot of materials which have been disposed of. Okay. One close-up view. So this photograph has attracted my attention. So this water is used for washing clothes, bathing, and also filtered water for cooking and drinking purposes. And here at the background you see even the pigs are taking the same water. So definitely this is not a living condition. So we come back to, if you ask me what is sustainability or what is sustainable construction or development. So it is very simple. The father of the nation long time back said, you live and let live. So the philosophy of these two words have a lot of meaning. So you live comfortably and you must also give room for others to live. Okay, that means whatever resources the present day generations are using and for their comfortable living, you must also preserve or keep the resources for your future generations in the years to come so that they can also live comfortably. So essentially sustainability is so simple as that. So let me come back to the what really is sustainable development from the researchers' point of view. So sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. Okay. So it is simply live and let live. So sustainable concrete construction is a step towards green and eco-friendly concrete construction practices. What are these practices? These practices are to address or solve global environmental problems. How to solve global environmental problems? You try to use less energy for production and produce less carbon dioxide than the normal concrete. So being the civil engineering fraternity, so our focus has to be in this. So if you ask what is not green in concrete, so the first and the foremost is cement. Of course, if you ask me, fine aggregate and coarse aggregates, they are also not green because you have to extract them, you have to transport them, you have to use them. Okay. So during the process of transportation, you are again driving the mechanical vehicles, amount of carbon dioxide emissions. So most prominent constituent of concrete, which is not green, is the cement because it has high embodied energy. It is going to reduce the limestone and clay deposits all over the world. And large amount of water is consumed during its manufacture. And energy for crushing aggregates, that is crushing your limestone and clay, we spend a lot of energy. And also we require energy for transportation of cement. So this has a lot of issues. Okay. So I'm just defining two terms, embodied energy and carbon footprint. Now, what is embodied energy is very simple, is the sum of the energy requirements which is associated either directly or indirectly with the delivery of a good or a service. Now, what is carbon footprint? Is the total set of greenhouse gas emissions caused either directly or indirectly by an individual, or it could be by an organization, or carbon footprint could be due to an event or due to the product. Now we come back to issues of durability or durable concrete, and we look at the deterioration of concrete. So if you say your concrete is getting deteriorated, it has considerable detrimental impact on resources. So the faster the deterioration, the sooner you are going to exhaust your available resources. So it is a cause of concern. So if there is deterioration, it is indirectly affecting the environment and the safety. Now the surplus line, as regards to durability, I am talking about two items. One is the surplus line and other one is the carbonation I would like to highlight. So surplus line is due to high C3S. So C3S is one of the hydration product of your cement, which is directly associated with high fineness of cement. So today we are producing very fine cement, maybe because of the technology involved. We are getting very fine cement. So more lime is released in the early days of the cement hydration. Therefore, it leads to leaching. That means your calcium hydroxide would like to get out of the body of your concrete product. And once it is getting leached, it makes the body of concrete more porous. If your concrete is going to be porous, it is having more acceptance or is liable for chemical attacks. So if you make the body porous, then your chemical can enter into the body of concrete, threatening the design or the life of your concrete. Now next one is the heat of hydration. So what we do with the heat of hydration is supposed to be rendered to the system. We require heat of hydration, which has to be rendered to the system when the system is in need. But due to fine grinding of cement, more heat is released in early days of hydration, resulting in micro cracking and thermal shrinkage cracks. Okay, this is another important aspect. Now the other factors are corrosion of reinforcement, carbonation, sulfate attack, alkali silica reaction in concrete are the major issues of durability. Now, what is carbonation? It is the process by which carbon dioxide from the air penetrates into the concrete. What happens? It reacts with calcium hydroxide in the presence of water to form calcium carbonates, leading to minor shrinkage. This is one aspect of the problem. Now, in presence of moisture, CO2 changes into dilute carbonic acid, which attacks concrete and reduces the pH, which is around 13, alkaline environment. It brings down to 8.3. We are making the environment acidic. So from alkaline environment, it is switching over to the stronger environment, that is towards the acidic range. Now, this is the advantage for us because if you have high pH or this is creating high alkaline passivating layers around the steel reinforcement, extending protection from corrosion. So more the alkalinity, your reinforcement is protected. Now, what happens at pH of 8.3? The protective layers get destroyed and steel is exposed to corrosion. The carbonation of concrete is one of the major reasons for this corrosion of steel reinforcement, and particularly in high humid conditions in coastal regions where humidity can be anywhere from 50 to 70%. Places like Mangalore has 90 plus humidity. Okay, in such case, this is going to be, or the carbonation of concrete is a serious threat for the deterioration of concrete. So I move to the issues related to this. What are concerns for all of us or the civil engineering fraternity faces, and what are the ways ahead to address this problem of sustainable concrete construction. So if you ask, are there any global efforts towards sustainability? Definitely yes. So the first attempt was in the year 2007, where we had the International Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. So this panel stated that global warming is no longer an issue that has to be debated. That means there is global warming. Okay. And this global warming is going to remain, and we must have drastic actions for long-term sustainability. Global warming is definitely due to the human activity and is irreversible. So IPCC came out with these three important things which are familiar, and it recommends drastic steps to reduce CO2 emissions, which is the primary source of global warming. And further, it also said if no actions are taken to curb or reduce CO2 emissions, it is likely that the Earth's average temperature could increase by 4 degrees C by the end of the century. Now, what happens if it increases more than 4 degrees? So temperature rise of 4 degrees C and above would have serious impacts on the food production all over the world. We are seeing this. Availability of water and also extreme weather events worldwide. So all these three are today happening due to global warming, which is a reason for your global climate change. Now, the next effort globally was the World Earth Summit, which was held in 2009, which was again a tragic failure because there was no agreement among the delegates who participated on fixing or establishing the binding limits on the emissions. However, there was a general consensus that if we are to avoid major catastrophic events in the future, the temperature rise by the end of the century should not exceed by 2 degrees C. So I talked about 4 degrees C in the previous slide. And if we have to be safe, we should restrict the temperature rise by more than 2 degrees C. Further, there are a lot of research works, technologies for capturing, storing, and using CO2. So I have just listed the 4 ongoing research works all over the world. So first technique is the sequestration of CO2, which involves capturing the greenhouse gas emissions and store them underground rather than allowing them to enter into the atmosphere. Okay. Now, storing this captured carbon dioxide into the underground earth probably is going to be a threat for the quality of groundwater. Okay. So research is on in this. Then you have the seawater and CO2. So here research is on to use seawater to react with captured CO2 to develop aggregates and or cementitious products. So this research is also ongoing. And the third one, there are efforts for converting atmospheric CO2 into commercial grade gasoline. The process involves which converts CO2 into cost efficient energy. So pilot studies are also going on. And fourth one is actually due to nature. So absorption of carbon dioxide that has been emitted by the oceans all over. So if you ask, they have absorbed nearly half of the CO2 emissions during the past 2 centuries. So this has been a blessing for all of us because whatever carbon dioxide emitted, 50% of that has gone into the oceans. So this has served as a sink. Now, due to tropical deforestation also is a cause of concern, is supposed to be the second biggest cause for global climate change, only next to burning of the fossil fuels. Now, because of deforestation, Indonesia and Brazil rank 3rd and 4th in the world in greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, the first and the second countries are China and USA. Now, Tibet is supposed to Tibet and global warming. So Tibet altitude is around 4 kilometers above mean sea level, and it is called the barometer of the world's climate and is very sensitive to temperature changes. So if you look at what is happening in Tibet, you are almost directly correlating it to global warming. So if we see in the past 5 decades from 1960 to 2010, so every decade or every 10 years, there has been an increase of 0.3. So 0.3 into 5 is in only about 50 years, you have brought a change of 1.5 degrees C. So when you compare the temperature in Tibet, so this is 6 times higher than other parts observed in China. So it is called the barometer of the world's climate. Now, what are the likely outcome of climate change? You have seen global warming, which is a cause for global climate change, and what price we are paying. All of us are familiar with this. The first one is the disappearance of the glaciers, which are very important for good source of drinking water that feed major river systems in South and Southeast Asia. They are fast depleting. Melting of the Antarctic glaciers, melting of the permafrost in the north, flooding that endangers the coastal low-lying areas. Okay, we may be forced to move inland because seawater level is increasing. You may have damaged ecosystem that endanger fisheries. You are likely to have danger of very serious air pollution because of the global climate change. You may have threat of increased danger of insect-borne diseases, increased threat of forest fires, and very serious floods. Forests turning to grasslands, very fertile land becoming barren land. And you may have extremely serious shortages of water both in Africa and Asia. We are already experiencing this. So I'm coming back to sustainability. So if you look at the production of cement, the carbon dioxide that we are emitting, okay. So if you produce 1 ton of cement, approximately 900 kgs or 0.9 ton of CO2 is emitted. Now, when you produce the concrete products using cement, we may have absorption of CO2 from atmosphere during the process of hardening. Therefore, minus 0.4 ton, around 400 kgs from here goes back into the body of concrete. So effectively, if you are producing 1 ton of cement, you are letting off around 500 kgs of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So let's look at the greenhouse gases from manufacture of OPC. So mostly we think, as I said, carbon dioxide, but greenhouse gas emissions include other things which I would like to highlight here. So manufacture of OPC is definitely highly energy intensive and is a significant contributor of greenhouse gas emissions. So enormous emission of CO2 into the atmosphere, along with minor amount of oxides of nitrogen and also methane. Now, oxides of nitrogen and methane, however small they are much more damaging than the carbon dioxide. So just to give you a feel, I have given you the relative damage indices for various greenhouse gas emissions. So if you take the damage of carbon dioxide is 1, methane is 20 times more threatening or more dangerous. Nitrous oxide is 200 times more dangerous, and fluorine is 15,000 times more deadly or dangerous than the carbon dioxide. So I move on to the next important resource in making or producing cement. We use water. Producing concrete, we use water. So I would like to share a few slides on how we have to handle water. So this is a photograph taken. I think most of you are familiar with this photograph. I would like to say a few remarks on this. This is the photograph taken by the photojournalist from South Africa by name Kevin Carter in the 90s. So depicting the droughts or the famine in Sudan. Okay, and the photograph taken is at a place which is 1 kilometer from the United Nations Food UNO food camp, and this child is having no food, he starved enough, and crawling to reach the United Nations Food Organization camp, which is 1 kilometer away. And this vulture is very stealthily waiting for the death of this child so that it can feed on this. So Kevin Carter took this photograph from a close position and made known to the world, and he won the most prestigious award on photography, that is the Pulitzer Award for his best photography. What happened later is he started getting several calls from people just were curious to know what happened to the child. It is very unfortunate to share that Kevin Carter rushed back to board his flight after taking this photograph. And we are not sure whether this baby child is alive today or not alive. Okay, that is the tragedy of this photograph I am depicting. Now, within 3 months, because this Kevin Carter started getting a lot of phone calls and he underwent severe depression because he did not do anything to protect or save this child, and he simply rushed back to airport to board his flight. And this guilt took his life and his life very desperately by tying the hose pipe in his garden to his neck and connecting it to his tractor and switching the engine on. But good thing Kevin Carter did is he left a suicide note telling that this day should be observed as the World Hunger Day, emphasizing that we must not waste food, and water also is so important. That's with those remarks, I just want to appeal to those who are listening to this webinar that it is everyone's responsibility to not to waste food, because there are people starving all over the world. Very difficult for them to earn one meal a day. And also water, which is associated with food production and food manufacture. With that, I'm just moving over to my next slide. So if you ask me, the next crisis is going to be water. Water shortage is because of global warming. The Himalayan glaciers are melting fast, and glaciers are getting back or retreating by about 10 to 15 meters. They are getting back every year. This is on one hand. Other hand, we are wasting a lot of water, say 9.5 billion liters of water for maintaining the world's golf courses, to irrigate the golf courses. So this is a luxury. And if I look at the irrigation for conveyance of water from a reservoir or a dam to irrigation fields, okay, where water has to reach, the efficiency of the water distribution is not that good. It is around 50 to 60%. So we waste around 40 to 50% of water during conveyance. So we have to address the efficiency of water conveyance. And of course, water table is depleting every year. It has to be recuperated. So let's look at some pertinent data as regards to availability of water. So from independence, if you look at 2000 or 2025, so per individual, we had around 6,000 meter cube per year when we got independence. Today, we have around 1340. So the water availability is decreasing, okay, maybe due to increase in population. Now, due to increase in population, again, water requirement is increasing. For irrigation, we had around 500 kilometer cube in 1985, and by 2025, our demand is going to be 800. Again, for industry, so if we 2000 to 2025, it is 4 times increasing. Drinking water has been on an increase because your population is increasing. So we are going to meet a threshold where water is definitely going to be scarce. Now, how to say you are water stressed? So if the per capita availability is going to fall below 1000 meter cube per year, we had around 6,000. Okay. If it comes to this, then you can call the area to be water stressed. So currently we have this availability. Very soon lot of the areas all over the world will be having water scarcity or they will be water stressed. So what do we do for sustainable development? Several important issues. So loss of storage due to silting. So simple is you do the desilting, you make your reservoirs or places impounding water so that water gets stored, not silt. Address the problem of declining groundwater table. You do the recharge, okay, and so that the groundwater table first has to stabilize, but it is always depleting now. To address the problem scientifically, the occurrence of droughts and floods. The water quality, degradation of water quality is also happening. This has to be scientifically looked at. Now, coastal areas have the problem of saltwater intrusion. It has to be addressed. And waterlogging in low-lying areas has to be addressed. Address the problem of drainage, proper drainage. And you have to preserve the soil nutrients by proper drainage. Other familiar techniques for preserving water, which is a source, as I say, for production of cement, for making concrete. Therefore, I'm talking about water here. So rainwater harvesting is a very simple technique we must preach and practice. You must encourage rooftop rainwater harvesting. I think government has to have a policy now for whatever new. So places like Chennai, already there are policies where every new house construction must have the provision for rainwater harvesting. So we are preserving water as a resource. We have several other technologies for water conservation and groundwater recharge techniques. They are to be encouraged and practiced. You may have storage devices either above or below ground, storage tanks, water containers, lagoons, infiltration ponds. Okay, so all of them have to be encouraged. And I would like to say water is very precious. We must save it for the future. So there are a lot of quick tips. I'm just not going into the detail in the interest of time of all of us. So every day there are many simple little things we can do around your house to save water. If we save water, you save money. And if we save water and money, you help the environment. So all of them start and end with you. So you are an important stakeholder if you have to preserve water. So adopt some clever shortcuts to save water. So all of us are familiar with a lot of shortcuts. Okay. So how to have a morning shave? Use a mug of water. How to brush? Don't use your running tap, but use a mug of water. So a lot of things are available and you get a lot of quick tips which have to be practiced if water has to be preserved as a very important commodity. What are remedial measures as far as water is concerned? Conjunctive use of surface water and groundwater. So we must have a policy how much surface water has to be used and how much groundwater has to be pumped. That means you must have an effective draft operation policy. You cannot go on exploiting groundwater if it is available to your whim and fancy. So government should get or it should intervene and tell how much should be the draft or how much groundwater that is being utilized from time to time. We must have improvement in irrigation efficiency. You must restore minor tanks, ponds, or any reservoir or water bodies. Interlinking of rivers, if feasible, viable. You must recycle and reuse water. Again, I'll be touching somewhere in my future slides. You must manage the demand for water very scientifically. Practice rainwater harvesting. If viable, have inter-basin transfer. Go for better farming practices. Adopt use of biofertilizers. And last one I have told in the previous slide, please put in place quick tips for saving water. Okay. So there are now several hotels which supply water only if you demand. Otherwise, they do not serve. If four of you go for a coffee, 4 glasses of water are not kept on the table. If you only say, they serve you water. So it is a very good step for saving water. Yeah, I think I am coming to my important slide just to give you the overview of the water as a resource. So this is one of the slide I have taken from the United Nations organization because they celebrated the water decade from 2005 to 2015. At the end of 2015, they came out with a 800-page PDF file. Okay, so one page I have taken. So those who would like to have more details can go. And this slide is on water and sanitation, which is the pathway to a sustainable future. What is addressed in this chapter 6.1 talks about safe drinking water. 6.2 talks about sanitation and hygiene. 6.3 talks about the importance of water quality. 6.4 water efficiency. 6.5 integrated water resources management. And the last one, water related ecosystems. So a lot of information is hidden. So those who are interested can Google and get your 800-page PDF, which is a work from 2005 to 2015. Okay, I just shared one slide on this. What is the way ahead? I am just moving further, and mostly I would like to share the research efforts that are on in NITK Surathkal, which is going to be my last part. Okay, so what are our ways ahead to address this problem of concrete sustainability? So to our advantage, we have a lot of industrial byproducts. You have the foundry sand. I have given very few. There are so many. Waste foundry sand, copper slag, ferrochrome slag. We have ferrochrome ash also, which we have used. Palm oil clinker. We have coconut shell, bottom ash, blast furnace slag, imperial smelting, steel slag, fly ash. Okay, both C and F class. So let's see how can we make concrete go greener. So we are talking about eco-friendly materials. We are talking about green concrete. We are talking about sustainable concrete. So how to make concrete go greener? First, we must reduce the content of OPC per cubic meter of concrete production. Try to reuse previously used concrete elements if they are good enough. We have to simply not throw them as debris, but try to reuse. Reduce or use water sparingly. Take water for making concrete to the extent really required, or use this as a very important resource. Of course, we are having admixtures to supplement or reduce the consumption of water. So you must recycle. That is, use recycled coarse aggregate and fine aggregate from your construction and demolition waste. So I'll be reporting a lot of studies that we have done, and you will appreciate what efforts have gone at NITK Surathkal on this. And if possible, even try to recycle your rebar leftovers. Use right admixtures, right aggregates, right reinforcement. That means you make a good concrete. You make a good concrete, it is more durable. So integrate concrete in green building elements. Go for aerated autoclaved concrete in the building. Maintain sustainable construction practices. I have hidden a lot of message in this. Maintain sustainable construction practices. What it means is you go for reduced pollution during construction, reduced water consumption during construction, reduced energy, and also maintain indoor quality. Okay, that is what I mean by maintaining sustainable construction practices. This is during ongoing projects. We come to, of course, blended cements. Anil Kumar Pillai also talked about blended cements. We have exploited to the extent possible. So Portland Pozzolana cement is being used extensively. Is a welcome sign because we are using fly ash. Portland slag cement. Okay, a lot of slag also we are using. We are producing PSC, both used. Now I'd like to take your or draw your attention to the composite cement, which has been recommended by the Bureau of Indian Standards. Is intimately interground mixture of your OPC clinker along with slag, along with fly ash. Now, you are going to use your limestone or clay clinker to the extent of either the lower limit or the upper limit. So you still preserve around 35% of your deposits. But use fly ash 15 to 35%. Use your granulated slag, ground granulated slag 20 to 50%. Okay. So this composite cement, which is a blend of your fly ash, blend of VGBS, is supposed to be more durable and is also recommended by Bureau of Indian Standards. So all these three are a welcome note for reducing the use of your manufacture of OPC. So you have found a substitute to the extent possible, and this has to be encouraged in the years to come. So of course, coal ash bricks have been commercially popularized. That is a welcome note. So a lot of people are producing your coal ash bricks, and you also have bottom ash, which is used as fine aggregate, is also a welcome note. So production of your coal ash brick, all of us know, you have the batching and mixing, then you convey it, do the pressing and molding, and you get the end product, you do the curing, and then you dispatch or transport them. We also have the concrete products. Okay, so this is by Master Planner Puttur. These products are termed as concrete, but they are looking like wooden products. So we have the concrete fencing, benches, and your garden terrace. Okay, so these products are already commercially available. Now, ferrocement items. So this is a photograph which is a ferrocement boat built in the Department of Applied Mechanics and Hydraulics in the year 1980 in NITK Surathkal. So if you ask me, we have not exploited this ferrocement items to the possible extent, because ferrocement is supposed to be a very superior product, because it is simply, you have the chicken wire mesh and you have a embed this chicken wire mesh with a rich cement mortar. Therefore, you produce very strong, durable, but very sleek or very slender items. So where all you think there is scope for manufacture of ferrocement items, I think in the years to come, ferrocement products should be exploited. I think they are underutilized in my opinion. So I'm coming to some selected research efforts at NITK Surathkal, which is my last part of the presentation. So please pay attention, those who are already doing research and those who want some takeaway from our research which have happened and which have been already published. Now the first work that we have that I'm sharing here is the characterization and performance of processed lateritic fine aggregates in cement mortars and concretes. So what we have done in this study is we have taken the lateritic sand, which is available in laterite deposits during the time of dressing of your laterite blocks. Okay, and we have come out with a systematic way of characterizing this lateritic fine aggregate. We have studied the performance in using lateritic fine aggregate in production of cement mortars and concretes. So if you go for any level of replacement of your lateritic fine aggregate as a substitute to your river sand, you can do it to 100% replacement. That is what we are reporting here. Now, if you go for any concrete, you can straight away use the lateritic fine aggregates which have been characterized the way we have done. You get the strength same or more than that you would have got by using your river sand. If it is cement mortar, okay, for 1 or 2 zones of fine aggregate, we had some problem. So what we have done in cement mortar, when you use 100% of your lateritic fine aggregate, we have enhanced this performance simply by replacing 10% of your OPC, 5 to 10% of your OPC that you are using in normal concrete by silica fume. So if you do that, So you can go for 100% replacement of your river sand, which is today not available, or it is very costly. People are charging now 8,000 to 9,000 rupees per truckload of fine aggregate, but also is not available. So in such case, if you can properly characterize and make use of 100% replacement by lateritic fine aggregate, you can handle your mortars and concretes without having any element of fear. So this is the work that I'm reporting. I'll go a little faster. Okay, you have lateritic soil deposits. During making your laterite blocks, you have a lot of wastage material. All of us know, as per IS 383, you have 4 zones of sand. Zone 1 is very coarse sand and zone 4 is very fine sand. So for various sizes, you have the lower class interval and upper class interval, percentage finer, that is given by this code. And for making our lateritic fine aggregate, we have taken the average of the class interval. So if I have to produce zone 1 sand, I'm looking at these percentage finer passing various sizes. If I want zone 2, I'm taking these, zone 3 and zone 4. So we have produced all 4 zones of lateritic sand, and we have also characterized them, and also we have studied the performance in both mortar and concrete. So how we have done the processing and characterization of lateritic fine aggregates? So from here, we have picked up the debris or the broken fragments of lateritic soil. We have passed it through jaw crusher in the lab. We have got this material. From here, we have taken product. This product is washed, okay, with wastewater on a 150 micron sieve, and you get a product. You do the sun drying. After you do the sun drying, we have stacked them in various cylinders here. This is probably passing 4.75 retained on 2.36. This is passing 2.36 mm size but retained on 1.18 sieve, that way. And you can produce any zone of sand, and then we have used it in making mortar and concrete. So if you look at the different gradation fractions for your different, for your unprocessed laterite, this is for river sand, various sizes or fractions. Unprocessed lateritic sand will look like this, and processed laterite will look like this. So first we have studied on laterized mortar, where we have gone for no replacement, everything is river sand. We have gone for full replacement, everything is lateritic sand, characterized lateritic sand. Okay, this is in absolute value compressive strength that we have got for various 4 zones of sand. Okay, don't look at this, we'll look at this. This is the normalized compressive strength. So here is my attention. So if you are looking at zone 3 and zone 4 sand, so at 25% replacement, they are far superior than what you have got for the river sand. Okay, so straight away, if you are using laterized mortars, you can use zone 3 and zone 4. Okay, so there is only plus or minus 2%. Okay, this may be due to experimental error. So zone 3 and zone 4 sand, which is characterized, you can use lateritic sand to the extent of 100% without compromising on the strength of your mortar. What happens to zone 1 and zone 2? Very coarse, little coarse. So you lose around 10 to 15%, okay, 10 to 12% of the strength when you look at 100% here. This is strength due to river sand. Now here we have gone for replacing 5 to 10% of your OPC in concrete by silica fume. So 90 to 95% is your OPC. Remaining is replaced by silica fume, which is superior material, and we have enhanced the performance of your zone 1 and zone 2, and you can use 100% replacement by that. So all the 4 zones, whatever is made or whatever is available due to your lateritic soil, can be used without having any fear for making laterized mortars. When you go for laterized concretes, again in absolute unit, I have given you the variation. So we are here, we have plus or minus 2%. Okay, this could be experimental error. Irrespective of any grade of sand, you can go for 100% replacement of the reverse sand with laterized sand. You don't compromise on your strength. Okay. So study 2, we have tried to use, or we have looked at the scope for using recycled aggregates in both mortar and concrete. Okay. So you have the natural coarse aggregate, you have the recycled coarse aggregate. Suraj, hello, Suraj. Suraj?
Suraj is not there. I think.
Anil,
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
take another 15 minutes? There is no problem.
No problem, no issues. You can take your time.
Yes, I have around another 20 slides, but everything is
No
going to
issues.
be.
You can take your time. Yeah, yeah. Because it is very useful. Because you can take your time. No issues.
Thank you, Anil. Yeah. So in this study, we have tried to go for replacing virgin or the natural coarse aggregate by recycled coarse aggregate that we have taken or from the construction and demolition waste. Okay. So we have tried to do the processing, and reverse sand also we have replaced by copper slag, which is again a value added product. We have also done the replacement due to your reverse sand by iron ore tailing, and we have used recycled coarse aggregate. Okay. So this study is very important where both the fine aggregate has been replaced to the extent possible by copper slag or by iron ore tailing. And instead of the virgin coarse aggregate, we have used the recycled coarse aggregate. Okay, so what we have done, so if there is no replacement, 100% virgin, you have the strength here. Okay, we have written normalized compressive strength. We go for 25% replacement of virgin coarse aggregate by recycled coarse aggregate, you lose strength. If you do 50% further loss, and everything is recycled coarse aggregate, you usually lose about 20 to 25% strength in concrete. Now, what we have done in this effort is I am reporting the compressive strength results for cement slurry treated RCA. So we have taken around 5% of your cement slurry, and whatever recycled aggregates are kept immersed in this cement slurry for 1 day. They are sun dried and they have been used in making concrete. So if you do that, so your control strength is here. For 25%, we have got 12% more than what is for the control mix. So these RCA, recycled coarse aggregates, have been treated with cement slurry. So whatever is your replacement, you have strengths more than what is for your virgin aggregate. So you can definitely go for full replacement of your virgin coarse aggregate by recycled coarse aggregate if you are treating your RCA for about 24 hours with 5 to 10% of cement slurry. So you lose around 5 to 10%, but you get the efficient aggregate so that you get the strength equal to what is for the normal concrete. So in this case, we have done the strength results for silica fume blended. Okay, part of the treatment is by silica fume. There also we are able to get. Again, very small amount of silica solution is used for treating this recycled coarse aggregate. Now, next study, what we have done is the strength for fly ash blended RCA based concrete. So part of the OPC is replaced by fly ash. So you have a blended cement kind of or replacement to OPC, and you are using RCA. Here, replacement to OPC and you are using RCA. In this case, we are doing even replacement to fine aggregate. Now, what we have done, reverse sand, you have the strength here. We have used recycled fine aggregate along with reverse sand. Now, why we have done this hybrid deals? The recycled fine aggregate, which are taken from your construction and demolition waste, are having the problem of water absorption. So anything less than your 300 micron, that is 300 micron and 150 micron, have the problem or they behave like clay and therefore we got rid of those two fractions. Okay, so this recycled fine aggregate does not have 150 and 300 micron size. Those are by reverse sand. Okay, I'm saving other fractions here. So similarly, I'm using IoT. Okay, so this is your recycled fine aggregate component and iron ore tailings, which is again an industrial byproduct. So both of them are superior than your reverse sand. So we use this fine aggregate also and shown that you have 4 or 8% more strength, okay, as a replacement to fine aggregate, reverse sand. So study 3, what we have done, performance studies on concrete with recycled coarse aggregate. So in this study, it is for the processing, how we are processing the recycled coarse aggregate. So for the first time, we have used a rod mill to do the processing. So rod mills are used by mining engineers. This cylinder has small steel rods, which are used to beat the mineral, okay, mineral ore. Okay, they want to process the mineral ore. They use this rod mill, which has the mineral ore beaten by small steel rods. So we thought, why not we use this rod mill to process the recycled coarse aggregate from your construction and demolition waste. So this study is very interesting. So we have optimized 3 parameters in this study. Now, how to say your recycled aggregate processing is good? So that is based on simple test, 24 hours water absorption test on the processed coarse aggregate. So first we have done water absorption for various weights of construction and demolition waste. Now, what is charge? This charge is your steel rod, weight of the steel. We have taken 840 grams. So if we take the C and D waste equal to the weight, okay, here C and D waste is 2 times the charge, 3 times, 4, 5 times. Now for all these, we have studied the water absorption, and it is very interesting to see. So if you take the C and D waste around 5 kg, have the charge, this is the steel rods, 840 grams, you have the least water absorption. That means this coarse aggregate is processed best compared to the remaining. So I have optimized for each run how much kg of C and D waste can be taken. Next, water absorption result for different types of charges. So we have tried, this is what I have reported, only rods. Weight is going to be, charge weight is about this. So conventionally people have used steel balls like your ordinary Los Angeles machine in the lab. Okay, they have used steel balls. We have used the combination. So if you do this, again our result, our study showed that using a rod mill, you get the best processing here. Okay, charge A is this ball mill, and A plus B is both the ball mill and rod mill. So we have optimized the rods as better. And the third and the last part is results of water absorption for processing times. Processing time, we have studied half an hour, 45 minutes and 90 minutes. So you have the least water absorption for 30 minutes. So we have this study we have highlighted. And next study that I am reporting is studies on usage potential of broken tiles as part replacement to coarse aggregates in concrete. Now we have studied using, because these Mangalore tiles are extensively used for roofing material, and these are broken during transportation and periodic maintenance of these tiled roofs due to breaks. We are replacing these, and you get lot of tile waste products. So for the first time, we have done a systematic study where this tile waste has been used as a coarse aggregate in concrete, has been used as a fine aggregate, and also we have used it as secondary cementitious material as a substitute to your OPC in concrete. So all three we have done. Now, apart from using the broken Mangalore tiles as coarse aggregate, as fine aggregate, and as secondary cementitious material, we have also done a lot of work on using recycled plastic waste. I'll show you. So we do the melt processing or melt processing of your domestic plastic waste, which is thrown or abused. Okay, we use the plastic and you prepare the pellets out of this melt processed plastic and use it as a filler or small, maybe 10 to 15% replacement to your river sand. Okay, use it in concrete and mortar. You can use fibers out of this MPP in concrete. And we have also done studies on your EPS products. We have used this thermocol or the packaging material as coarse aggregate in concrete, both in normal concrete and in pervious concrete. We also use this material in concrete and mortar. Now this is a melt processing plant in Baikampadi in Mangalore here. So this chamber is a heat chamber where all the plastic bags, okay, domestic plastic bags have been put here and they have been melted. And the melted plastic is allowed to flow or extruded from this here extruder, and these are allowed to flow in the water bath, and you get cooled strands of melt processed strands. And we, from the water bath, we use a pelletizing machine or a cutting machine, and these strands are cut into small pieces, which I'm calling as pellets. And these pellets are filled in bags. And it looks like this. So you can bury these pellets about 10 to 15% without compromising much on the quality. Even if the strength comes down, you can identify where you can use these lightweight concrete products for non-structural applications. So that way we have shown that even plastic pellets can be buried scientifically in some products. So we can use this MPP fibers of different aspect ratios in increasing the flexural strength of concrete. Next, tile industry. We have a lot of tile waste. So we can make coarse aggregate, which we have used successfully in making concrete. Okay, it looks good because it is a ceramic material with very superior quality soil, which is burnt. So they have got very good strength. So we have used this as secondary cementitious material in concrete. Then we have used the thermocol or the packaging EPS material, shredded and cut into coarse aggregates of different size. Okay. Now, development of new resource saving systems and increased recycling and recovery of waste materials. We have attempted this, that is, to reduce the environmental impact of concrete so as to address sustainability. So melt processed plastic pellets utilization as filler in concrete is very promising. It is a means to manage non-biodegradable waste. Broken Mangalore tile being a ceramic material by virtue of which it possesses good heat resisting properties, and when you incorporate in concrete and mortar is definitely going to perform better in the event of accidental fires. Again, broken Mangalore tile being a burnt clay product possesses pozzolanic properties which can be utilized when finely grounded or ground and blended with cement. The results from EPS based concrete and mortar suggest that there is scope for non-structural applications like lightweight bricks, rooftop applications, and also serves as a solution for EPS disposal. So my last remark, a small reduction of the environmental impact per ton of concrete will result in large environmental benefits because of the vast amount of concrete that we are producing today. So some of our other related studies I am highlighting. We have done studies on durability studies on ferrochrome ash. So it is a product from the chromium industry. So we use the ferrochrome slag as coarse aggregate in sustainable alkali activated either slag or fly ash based concretes. We also used ferrochrome ash, which is a substitute to OPC. Our other studies are, I'll say first, potential use of mine tailings, that is iron ore tailings and fly ash in concrete, we have done. Then we went ahead in 2017 to do the durability studies on concrete with partial replacement of cement and fine aggregates by both fly ash and iron ore tailing material. So I'm coming to my last 2-3 slides. my closing remarks on how the civil engineering fraternity should contribute. The cement and concrete industry can contribute to reduction of CO2 emissions. You address the problem of global warming, you address the problem of global climate change, and then address sustainability. Use design mixes against nominal mixes. We are all familiar with this. We must go for right concrete mix design, so you save on the costs of concrete ingredients. Use as less Portland cement as possible. Use as more as the cementing materials, and consume less unit water by going for water reducers and super plasticizers. Incorporate recycled aggregates in concrete. Use stainless steel reinforcement for important structures in the critical parts so that you make them more durable, only for special applications, special projects. Okay. So where possible, specify strength acceptance criteria based on 2 months or 3 months instead of 28 days. Promote roller compacted concrete for pavers and gravity dams. Use lightweight concrete wherever possible, and develop self-compacting concrete using large volumes of fly ash instead of large volumes of cement. And so reduce viscosity enhancing chemicals. Design for durability instead of strength. Our revised IS 456 has also given guidelines for concrete mix designs based on durability. Use pervious or porous concrete as much as possible. Advocate the use of geopolymer concrete or alkali activated concretes. We are doing that. Adopt alternatives to river sand. You have a lot of river sand substitutes. I talked about the lateritic sand, talked about copper slag, iron ore tailings, bottom ash. Okay. So all these materials that you are using on a long scale should preferably be characterized and then used. Use as less water as possible and go for recycling of the water. So I'm done with that. So I close my presentation by sharing a prayer from Gitanjali. Rabindranath Tagore got a Nobel Prize for English Literature in the year 1922. So I just taken an extract of this. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. So if you are fearless, you can command respect. Where knowledge is free, no point having you are knowledgeable if you are not willing to share, it is waste. Where the world has not been broken into fragments by narrow domestic walls. So do not give importance for small little things and get fragmented. Where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into dreary desert sand of dead habit. So we must know where we are going, what is our vision. Where the mind is led forward by the into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So thank you very much for listening to my lecture. I think I've taken more time than what was allotted to me. So back to Suraj and back to Anil. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful presentation on sustainable concrete. In fact, you have touched upon all aspects of the materials that is being used for concrete and how to make it more sustainable. That made it all the more interesting. In fact, the subject of today's presentation was confined to sustainable concrete. But if the professionals would like to have a more broader guidelines on sustainability, I would advise them to also refer to part 11 of NBC 2016 approach to sustainability, where a broader approach is also there. So you would also extend your this thing towards this broader approach, because it has been told that even from the dawn of the civilization, our ancestors, they were concerned with preserving and sustenance of environment. In fact, the ancient Vedas had several references to environmental protection, ecological balance, and many of the monuments which have come across in the country. Say, for example, if you take Taj Mahal, which was built for more than 400 years ago, it can accommodate hundreds of people with no suffocation. So when you look at sustainability, I think one needs to look at from broader perspective. So let me just, can we take some questions, sir? There is one question, of course, which is not related to sustainability.
Suraj?
Yeah, you're able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Oh, 1 second. 1 second. I call Malpur. Yeah, 9. When half an hour, call for it, please.
Dr. Subhash, you're able to hear me?
Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah, yeah. I think there was some lag. Now it is fine. Yeah.
Okay. There is a question. Can we take a question,
Hello?
sir? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, is it possible for you to take a question? There is a question.
Hello?
Hello? The question from Mr. Umanath Nayak.
Hello, Suraj?
Yeah, you're able to hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, you're able to hear?
Yes, yeah, Anil.
Yeah, the question by Mr. Umanath Nayak, although not related to sustainability, but he says, is there a good way of demolishing of concrete or masonry with minimum noise? Because which can sometimes create problems for other people around the apartment block. He's talking about noise pollution. I think we have lost contact, Suraj, with Dr. Subhash, no?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, it's indicating poor bandwidth. Oh, he's back again.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, sir, are you able to hear us? I don't think he's able to hear us, sir.
Okay, okay. Then I think probably we'll close the session with that because this was a very good presentation on sustainable concrete. And on behalf of Ramco Cements, let me thank Dr. Subhash Yargal for that wonderful presentation and to all the professionals who have joined us. So this was the 95th webinar that we were having today. And I'm sure that many of the professionals had a lot of takeaways from today's webinar. So tomorrow we have a webinar at 5:30 p.m. And it's not on technical aspect, but of course given by an architect on effective presentation using pictorial presentation as well as videos. So webinar on presentation skills tomorrow evening at 5:30 p.m. So with those few words, let me thank all the professionals who have joined us, and thanks to the speaker for having given this wonderful presentation. Thank you. And to the question by Mr. Umanath Nayak, I think we need to look at the practical way of demolishing of concrete, which are possible to do that. Of course, the speaker had already covered about the usage of recycled aggregate from demolished concrete. But then the ways for demolition and all would need a different expertise altogether. So I think today's webinar was not covering about that, but nevertheless, we can get a lot of information on the ways to demolish them. So with those few words, let me thank all of you, and thanks Suraj. So we sign off from today's webinar. Thank you so much.